So they tell the story about the famous Rav of Slonim, Rabbi Yosef Bavad. Rabbi Yosef Bavad, once Erev Pesach, was asked by his wife if he already got rid of all of the Comets. He was a sharp fellow, known for his very often frequent snidey remarks. So he tells his wife, I got rid of all of the Comets almost. There's one piece of Chametz in my house that's been with me for 35 years. And from this Chametz, I just can't get rid of. His wife tells him, about that piece of chametz you need not worry, because 35 years ago my father sold it to a goy gomer. My father sold it to a complete Gentile, so all is good. This is the literal pshat of Ezer Kenegdoi, without all the other fancy pshatlach. Today, we're going to discuss, as we enter into the month of Nisan, preparing for the great Yom Tov of Pesach, we're going to discuss the mitzvah of destroying Comets, both from a halachic point of view, and then also from a more psychological and spiritual point of view. Everybody knows that when it comes Pesach, there is a unique prohibition concerning Chametz. It's not just that the Torah says you're not allowed to eat Chametz during the 7 or 8 days of Pesach. It's not only that the Torah says you're not allowed to benefit from Chametz during the days of Pesach. You can't sell it or feed it to your animals or make a profit from it. But furthermore, Parshas Boy articulates that Chametz is forbidden to be in the domain of a Jew during Pesach. The terminology of the Torah in Parshas Boy and Chazal very often, Chametz is asur in Bal Yeroeh and Bal Yimotzeh. Sa'or lo yimotzeh b'vatechem, lo yeroeh lecha sa'or b'chol gvulachem. In other words, the very existence of Chametz within the domain of a Jew during the 7-8 days of Pesach is biblically prohibited. And therefore, naturally, one would assume that from the Torah's perspective, what is the proper method of preparing for Pesach? Physically getting rid of all of the chametz. Eliminating the chametz, removing it from your property, from your domain, from any domain that belongs to you. There's no chametz anymore in your domain, and you're ready to go for Pesach. You won't eat it, you won't benefit from it, and of course you don't own it. You don't have it, you relinquish your ownership, it's gone. You physically obliterate it and eliminate it. Comes the Gemara in the Masechta Pesachim and makes the famous statement. Source number 1, Pesachim Daf Daled Amud Beis. The Gemara says, Kiva de b'dikas chametz b'derabbananu, de m'daraisa b'bittel ba'al masagile. The commandment to search for chametz and then physically eliminate the chametz, that's only a rabbinic obligation. Because min ha-Torah m'daraisa, bittel alone is sufficient. What does bittel mean? Literally, bittel means nullification. We'll soon see what bittel means. But we see here that min ha-Torah, bittel enough, bittel alone is sufficient. So, if somebody does bittel, which as we will explain the different definitions, but let's take the basic definition. If somebody in his mental or her mental mind and verbally says, this chametz is worthless, it's earth, it's as valueless as dust, I don't need it, I don't care for it, it can remain in your home. It could be there right in front of you for 7 days of Pesach, the pizza, the falafel, the vodka, the liquor, the cookies, it can all be there as long as you declare it before Pesach that it's bottled, it's meaningless, it's valueless, min ha-Torah, you're good to go. Which really means that the preparations for Pesach in the days of yore were quite easy. Because the time when Chametz becomes forbidden to eat and to benefit, and the time you get rid of Chametz is Erev Pesach, midday. If the day would begin, theoretically, at 6 a.m., if 6 a.m. was sunrise, so the time to get rid of the Chametz is 12 o'clock. So 11:59, the Jew would stand up and make a declaration and say, you see all this Chametz, I don't care for it. I don't need it. It's like the dust. It's like the dust on my couch. It's like the dust on the floor. It's valueless. It's meaningless. And that's it. And you're good to go. This is how the Ran, Rabbi Nissim, explains it famously in the opening of Masechta Pesachim, that min ha-Torah bittul is a completely viable, sufficient option for getting rid of Chametz, and you have to do nothing else. Now go and have fun, prepare your Seder. And yet, the rabbis came and said, no, bittul is insufficient. We need bedika and biur. Bedika means go find physically the Chametz in your house, and get rid of it. Destroy it, burn it, throw it away. It's not enough to be at mevatel mentally and verbally. You need to physically get rid of it. And they also said that the night before you should already start searching for it, which we call bdikas chametz. Why did they have to do this? What was the problem with the halacha of Torah? So Tosfos in the opening of Pesachim gives one reason. The Ran, Rabbeinu Nissim, in the opening of Pesachim gives a second reason. Let's see the summary articulated in Shulchan Aruch Harav, Oire Chaim Hilchos Pesach, Siman Taf Lamed Aleph Seif Dalet. Umipnei Beis Dvarim Niskiku Chachamim Lekach. There's two reasons that compel the sages to add the dimension of bedika and biur in addition to bit. Ha'alef, number one, L'fi shabitul v'hefker toli b'machshavtei shel adam she'afkirenu b'leiv shalom v'yotzienu milibui legamri. For bittul to be effective, it depends on the person's thought, on the person's mental consent. Meaning, in his heart, he should really relinquish ownership. In his heart, he should really feel that I don't need it. It's mamish like dust. Ulefi she'ein das kol b'nei adam shavin. And since people's minds and mental states are not identical, v'efsher misha yakal b'davar v'lo yafkirenu b'leiv shalom v'lo yotzienu milibui legamri. Somebody is standing in front of a bottle of liquor that cost him $600, and he's looking at it, Erev Pesach 11:59, and he says it's bottle, it's hefker, it's kafredar, it's like dust. He's saying it, but does he mean it? He may not really mean it. He can't get himself to really say it's worthless, it's valueless, anybody could come take it. He's doing it because that's what he was told to do, it's the appropriate thing to do. But bittul is about a mind, it's a mindset. And that may not exist. So therefore, lefichach gazru, so the Chachamim decree, she'ein bittul vehefker moyel klum, at she'yotzi es ha-chametz mikol gevuloi. So the Chachamim said, bittul and hefker, meaning relinquishing the ownership of the chametz while it stays in your house. If you get rid of it physically, then there's no problem. But if you physically leave it in your house, but you relinquish it with your bittul, it doesn't help. It's not effective because for some Jews, this actually may not be a viable option. The bittul is not authentic, and hence he remains or she remains with the chametz, and when Pesach comes, they transgress the violation of Bayirah Bayamatz. This is the reason of the Ran. Habez, the second reason, this is the reason of Tosfos, and also in the Ran, a person is accustomed all year to Chametz. And because of the habit to eat Chametz, if the Chametz remains right there in your pantry throughout Pesach, you come down one morning for breakfast, you forget, and you naturally gravitate to the piece of bread, the piece of pita, you put it in your microwave, and you eat it. You forgot. It's there. You will mavatal it, but you still ate it. And that's, of course, forbidden. Im yiyeh munach b'gvulei b'Pesach, if it's going to be there, lefichach itzrichu lechapes acharav, livdoi kol oitziyim mikol gvulei, koidim sheyagiz man isra achilasa. Thus, the sages required a Jew to search for the chametz, to remove it physically from his domain, from his property, from her property, before the prohibition of eating begins, which is Erev Pesach midday. Before that time, you have to physically get rid of all of the chametz if it belongs to you. And thus, we have two reasons. Somebody could make it a little lower, if anybody knows how to do it. Nuchi is here, Rabbi Shana is here. So two reasons that bittul is insufficient and bedika and biur was introduced into the picture of the Jewish people, and that's why the opening mission of Masechet Pesachim is Or L'Arba Asar Boitkin Es HaChametz L'Or Hanei, which is not a Min HaTorah obligation. It's a rabbinic obligation, because Min HaTorah, the Gemara says, Bittul Ba'alma Sagi. Thank you very much. What is bittul? What is bittul, and how do we know that Min HaTorah bittul is sufficient? The Pasuk says in Parshas Bo, you're not allowed to eat chametz. The Pasuk says in Parshas Bo, you're not allowed to have chametz. The Pasuk says in Parshas Bo, you're not allowed to see chametz, your own chametz in your property throughout Pesach. It can't be there. It can't exist. That would mean you have to get rid of it. What's this concept of bittul, and what's its source? How can the Gemara say Min HaTorah bittul ba'alma sagile? So Rashi tells us the third source. Rashi Psachim Daf Daled Amud Beis says Rashi bittul ba'alma diksiv tashbisu v'lo ksiv tevaru v'hashbasa deleiv hi hashbasa. Rashi points out a strange phrase used in Chumash. In your next source we have the pasuk. Parshas Boy, Perikid Beis, Pasuk Tesvav. Shivas Yomim Matzis Techelu. Eat matzahs for 7 days. Ach b'yoyim harishon, but on the first day, Tashbisu Sa'or Mibatechem. You must be mashbis the Sa'or, the yeast from your homes. Ki kaloichel chametz v'nichrus ha'nefesh ha'imi yisrael miyom harishon ad yom hashvi. Because anybody who eats chametz, the soul of Israel, that soul is cut off from the first day of Pesach through the 7th day of Pesach. What does the word Tashbisu mean? Rashi says it should have said Tevaru on the first day, Tashbisu. Tevaru, Sarma Batechem. Tevaru means to eliminate, to exterminate, to obliterate, to destroy, to get rid of. That's the word. What does Tashbisu mean? Tashbisu has another connotation. Yesterday in Parshas Vayikra we had the word V'loi Sashbis Melach. You should not be mashbis melach, salt from any carbon. What does the Targum Onkelos say on V'loi Sashbis? V'loi Sevatlo. Don't be mevatel. Don't take away salt. Every sacrifice had to have salt. Shabbos, Shabbosoin, Tishbois, Tashbisu means, Rashi says, bittul. The hashbasa, the levi hashbasa. What type of bittul is this? It's not the physical obliteration. That's tevaru. Tashbisu, Rashi says, is a mental decision. It's hashbasa the lev. It's an emotion. It's a feeling. It's an experience. It's a mental declaration to yourself that this chametz is worthless. That's the chiddush of the word tashbisu. Tashbisu does not mean physically obliterate the chametz. The chametz could be right here, but if in my mind and my heart I look at it as valueless, it's as though it's non-existent in terms of Bayira, Bal Yimotze, and I'm good to go for Pesach. The Rambam elaborates on this. Rambam Hilchus Chametz Umatzah Perik Beis, the next source. Zok the Rambam. Mitzvah says Min HaTorah lahashbis chametz koydem zman yisur achilasa. So mitzvah says Min HaTorah to be mashbis chametz before the time when it's forbidden to eat it. Shenemar ba'yoyim harishon tashbisu sa'or mibatechem. Mipi hashmuel lamdu. We have learned in the oral tradition from Moshe sherishon zehu yoyim arba asar. When it says ba'yoyim harishon, it doesn't mean the first day of Pesach. It means the day of Erev Pesach, the 14th. V'raya l'davar zeh, proof is memasha kasav b'Torah lo yisishchet al chametz dam zivchi. Do not slaughter the carbon Pesach when you have chametz. Keloymar lo yisishchet ha Pesach v'al chametz kayem u'shchitas ha Pesach u'yoymar ba'asar acher chatzos. When did they slaughter the carbon Pesach? 14th day of Nisan after midday, after 6 hours. and from that time the Torah says you're not allowed to have chametz, lo yisishchat al chametz dam zivchi. So this also is a proof that ach b'yom harishon tashbisu means Erev Pesach, which is the proof of Rav in Pesachim Daf Hey Amud Aleph. Why B'yom Harishon doesn't mean the first day of Pesach, rather we interpret it as Erev Pesach, when midday, which is the time of Hakravas HaPesach. From then you're not allowed to have chametz. Asks the Rambam, Mahi Hashbasa Zu Ha'amura B'Torah. What is the nature of this Hashbasa Tashbisu, which we're required to do Erev Pesach before the Zman, before the time when you're forbidden to eat chametz? Hu sheyevatel hachametz miliboy v'yachshav oisei ka'afar v'yosim beliboy she'ein b'rishusei chametz klal v'shakol chametz she'b'rishusei arei ka'afar u'kedavar she'ein b'y tzorech klal. Very articulate. The person considers it as earth, as dust. He feels, he experiences in his heart that in his domain there's no chametz, even though he has a house full of chametz. But it's meaningless, it's inconsequential, it's valueless, it's insignificant, it's garnished. It's like the dust in your house. All the chametz is like offer, it's something that you have absolutely no need for. And since you have absolutely no need for, so the Torah is happy, is content with that as the definition of Hashbasa. U'midivrei Sofrim, came the rabbis and said, no. Chachamim said, search for the chametz and get physically rid of it. V'chein medivrei sofrim sheboitkin umashbisin hachametz balayla mitchilas leila arba aser lo'el haneir mipnei shebalayla kol ha'am mitzuyim bebateiim v'iraneir yafol l'bdika. They also instituted something else. Not only the Erev Pesach 11:59 or 12 o'clock get rid of the chametz, but the night before when people are home and you use the lamp, the candle, because it's good for searching, you should search for the chametz and then ultimately get rid of it. This is the view of Rashi and the Rambam, that Tashbisu teaches us a new type of destruction of chametz, not physical, but mental, emotional. It's the concept that you view it as offer. Comes Tosfos. Tosfos on Pesachim Daf Daled Amud Beis raises two major questions on Rashi. Zok Tosfos. Midoraisa v'bitul ba'al masagi. Pirish b'kuntris, Rashi said, midiksiv tashbisu v'loiksiv tevaru alma hashbasa b'levi. Since it doesn't say tevaru, it says tashbisu. Obviously, this is something in the leiv, it's in the heart. It's a different type of elimination of chametz. V'kashaleri. Rabbeinu Yitzchak has a great problem with Rashi. The high hashbasa have ari v'loi bittul. It's not true. Tashbisu does not mean bittul. Tashbisu actually means burning the chametz. How do I know? The Tanya B'Shmaitin we learned in the Gemara Pesachim Daf Hey Amud Aleph. Rabbi Akiva Omer Ein Sarich Harei Omer Tashbisu Motzinu La'avara Shu'av Malach. I quoted this Gemara in the next source after Tosfos, so we can understand what Tosfos is saying. The Gemara in Pesachim Daf Hey Amud Aleph dedicates more than a page to understand how we know that Bayom Harishon means Erev Pesach and not Pesach. Bayom Harishon means the first day of Pesach, so I would think you should destroy the chametz on Pesach. How do we know it's Erev Pesach? So the Gemara says, Rabbi Akiva Omer Ein Tzarich. You don't need any of the other sources that were discussed earlier in Gemara. It says on the first day of Pesach you have to be mashbis. Uksiv, it also says kol malacha lo sasu. You're not allowed to do malacha on Yom Tov. Umatzinu lahav arash she'av malacha. Lighting a fire is one of the 39, one of the Av Malachas that are Asur on Shabbos, but also on Yom Tov. Because Rabbi Akiva doesn't hold, as the Gemara says later on Daf Hey Amud Beis, Metoich Shehutra L'Tzorech, Hutra Nami Shaloi L'Tzorech. Rabbi Akiva holds you're only allowed to light a fire, you're only allowed to cook for food that you're going to eat on Yom Tov. But to burn chametz, it's not Oichel Nefesh, it's not something for personal consumption. Rabbi Akiva doesn't hold it's permissible on Yom Tov. So Tashbisu means Havar. Havar is an Av Malacha. 1 second, if Tashbisu is Bittul, what's Rabbi Akiva's proof? If Tashbisu is Bittul, you could do Bittul on Pesach. The problem is not Av Malacha. To say that Chametz is like dust is not an Av Malacha. Clearly, Tashbisu means Havara, making a fire burning. Where does Rashi come and invent this idea that Tashbisu means anything else but creating a fire? Which of course leaves us with a big problem. So how do we know that in Torah you could do Bittul? What is even Bittul? But then Tosfos asks not a question from a source of Rabbi Akiva. Tosfos asks what seems like a question that is very, very powerful. What's the second question? V'oid te tashbisu amrinan lekaman me'ach chilek shehu mishei shoyes ulamayla, va'achar isura loy mahani bittul. The Gemara says a little later, Daf Hey Amud Aleph, it says, Ach bayoyim harishon tashbisu soimer b'teich. What does bayoyim harishon mean? We already established it means Erev Pesach, which the Gemara proves from many sources. It doesn't mean Pesach, it means Erev Pesach, like Rabbi Akiva also proves. When Erev Pesach? In the morning, the night before. We know that the night before, in the morning of Erev Pesach, we all have chametz, we eat chametz, we enjoy chametz, we sell chametz. So the Gemara learns out from the word Ach. Ach bayoyim harishon, Ach chilek. Ach splits the day. In other words, only the day of Rishon. It doesn't say Bayoyim Rishon. There's already a qualification. There's a limitation. It's not all the day. It's Ach, only on the day. In other words, you're mamayit, you're diminishing part of the day. So we logically split the day into two. Ach chilik, and we say the first half of the day you're good. The second half of the day from 12 o'clock p.m. if the day begins at 6, whenever is the end of 6 hours, Zmaniyos, from that time, you're not allowed to have chametz, you have the mitzvah of tashbisu. Achilik, Rashi gives a second interpretation based on Kabbalistic Sefer Yetzirah of the formulation that the two letters Ach can be changed to the two letters Chetz. Ches Tzadik are substitutes for Aleph Chav, which Rashi discusses based on a Gemara in Shabbos, Kuf Dalet. So Ach means Chetz, Chatzi, Ach b'Yom HaRishon, midday of Yom HaRishon, you have to be Mashbis Chametz. So when is the mitzvah of Tashbisu? Misheish Shoyes Ulamayla. When midday comes, the Torah says, right now, Tashbisu. If sunrise would be 6, 12 o'clock, right now is the mitzvah of Tashbisu. Sunrise is usually not 6, so it's earlier, but depends on the structure of the time when Pesach comes out. But at the end of 6 hours, we don't count the 6 hours, 60-minute hours. You divide the day into 12. And at the end of those 6 hours, you have the mitzvah of Tashbisu. So here Tosfos asks a gewaldige question. What's his question? Take a look in the source after Pesachim Hey Aleph, Pesachim Vav Amud Beis. The Gemara says, Dilma mashkachas leila basar isura, v'lav b'rishuse kaime v'lei matzi mevatel. The Gemara is talking there about why once we do bdika, we still do bittul. We do bdika and we do bittul. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav haboidik tzarich sheyevatel. You have to be mevatel. Why? Because if you're only going to rely on bdika and biur, in the middle of Pesach, you may suddenly find under your couch a nice geschmack bottle of mashka or a nice geschmack of cheese Danish, and you're not going to want to destroy it that moment. You may delay it a few minutes because it's too good, and those few minutes you delay it, you're over on by your matzeh. So that's why we are mevatel. We are mevatel the Comets. So the Gemara discusses when you should be mevatel. So the Gemara says you should be mevatel the night before after b'dikas Comets. Why can't you be mevatel? Why can't you be mevatel during the day? So the Gemara says, Dilma mashkachas le'lebasar isura v'lav b'rishus kaime v'lei motzi mevatel. You may find the Comets after the time of the Isser, and then it's not in your rishus, it doesn't belong to you, and then you can't do bittul. In other words, if you're going to find Chametz in the middle of Pesach, after Erev Pesach midday, you can't do bittul anymore. Why can't you do bittul? Because for you to do bittul, it has to be yours. Chametz and Pesach is not yours. The Amar Rebbe Lazar Shnei Dvarim Einem B'Rishus Yishal Adam V'Asan HaKasav Kilu B'Rishusay Ve'elu Ein Bar B'Rishusay Rabim V'Chametz M'Shei Shayis Alamayla. There are two things that don't belong to a person, but Torah holds you accountable for them as though it belonged to you. If you create a hazard in a public domain, you dig a pit in Rishusay Rabim, it doesn't belong to you, but you are held responsible for the hazards. And Chametz on Pesach, it doesn't belong to you, you're not allowed to eat it. You're not allowed to sell it. So basically it has no monetary value to you. From a Torah perspective, it's worthless, it's insignificant. So if you don't own it, how can you violate any prohibition? But Torah holds you accountable since you didn't get rid of the chametz. When can you get rid of the chametz? Before Pesach or in the middle of Pesach. But to do bittul, the Gemara says, bittul has to be before the Zman HaIsur. Because once the time of the Isur comes, it's not yours anymore to relinquish it and say it's like dust. It's not yours. It's only yours in terms of accountability, but it's not yours in terms that you have the ability to be at Mavatal. So clearly the Gemara says, bittul has to be before the Zman HaIsur. So what's Tosfos asking? When is Tashbisu? Tashbisu is at the end of 6 hours, Erev Pesach. If Tashbisu means bittul, you can't do bittul then. You're not allowed to do bittul. If somebody waits till the end of 6 hours Erev Pesach and says, now I'm going to be mevatel my chametz, it's meaningless. It's not yours anymore to be mevatel. To be mevatel it, to be mafkir it, to make it earth, to make it dust, to make it insignificant, it has to be yours. It's not yours. There's no monetary value for you, so you can't do bittul anymore. So here is Tosfos' gewaldige question on Rashi. If tashbisu means burning, it's not a problem. 12 o'clock p.m. comes Erev Pesach, and you make a fire and you burn the chametz. Tashbisu is burning. But if tashbisu means, like Rashi, bittul, then the whole structure of the mitzvah doesn't make sense. Because you're not allowed to do bittul then. So when is tashbisu? Earlier in the day. But it says, ach b'yoyim harishon tashbisu, and the Gemara clearly says, and nobody argues, that it's Erev Pesach midday. That's when you have the mitzvah of tashbisu. According to Rashi, there's no way anybody can ever do the mitzvah of tashbisu, because once 6 hours are completed on Erev Pesach, bittul is not an availability in halacha any longer. A clear Gemara that nobody argues with. This is Tosfos' second question on Rashi. So the Ri answers back to Tosfos, the Medoraisa bittul ba'al masagi mitam the ma'acher shebitloi have a hefker v'yotzim mirishusoi umuter midde kamrinen aval atorah shlacheirim v'shal gavoya. Tosfos redefines the meaning of bittul. Bittul is not like Rashi. Bittul has to do with the regular concept of hefker in halacha. You relinquish ownership of the chametz, and since it's not yours, you don't violate, because the pasuk says lo yera lecha sa'ar b'chol gvulecha. So Chazal derive from this in Masechet Pesachim. Shalcha yatera. You're not allowed to see your own chametz, but you're allowed to see other people's chametz and chametz of hektish. Which is why if a Gentile's chametz is in my home and I see it and it's there, it's not a problem. Lo yera lecha. You can't have your chametz in your domain. You're allowed to have somebody else's chametz in your domain if it doesn't belong to you. That's the concept of selling, right? You could sell the chametz, and as a result of that, you're not over. So Tosfos says bittul is not a new concept that exists by chametz that doesn't exist anywhere else. It's the regular concept of hefker. You relinquish ownership. It's not yours. That's what bittul means. You get up Erev Pesach and you say, you know what? All this chametz doesn't belong to me. Come and take it. It's hefker. That's it. It's hefker. If it's hefker, it's not yours. If it's not yours, there's no problem of bal yira. Even though the Gemara says you need to do hefker in front of 3 people, we're talking here minat Torah. Minat Torah, you don't need 3 people, you can do it on your own, and therefore it becomes hefker. So what does tashbisu mean? According to Tosfos, tashbisu means burning the chametz, destroying the chametz, eliminating the chametz physically. When do you do that? 12 o'clock p.m., Erev Pesach, ach b'yom harishon tashbisu. The Gemara says, minat Torah, bittul is sufficient. It's not because of the word tashbisu. It's a general concept. If you're mafkir chametz, it's not yours. If it's not yours, what's the problem? So minat Torah, all you should do is be mafkir the chametz, stand in your house, say it's ownerless, and as a result of that, it doesn't belong to you, and then you could keep it there a whole Pesach. After Pesach, you want to reacquire it, acquire it. You don't want to reacquire it, don't acquire it, but it can remain there. The Chachamim said that's not good enough. You need bdika and you need biur. This is Tosfos' perspective. It's a different definition of bittul, and it's a different definition of tash bisu. That's what Tosfos says. That b'doraisa, it could remain in your reshus, and you don't need 3 people. Min HaTorah, it works. The Ran, the first Ran in Pesachim, has a little bit of a different mahalach. He asks the same question like Tosfos. You need 3 people. You need to take hefker out of your reshus, and so on and so forth. And the Ran famously gives his own brilliant definition of bittul, and he says that since the chametz is really not yours on Pesach, right? The Torah takes it out of your domain because there's nothing you can do with it. So what makes it yours? You can't eat it, you can't benefit from it. Basically, there's no value to you. So essentially, it's hefker. So what's the problem? You're not over. It's just Rebbe Lezer says that there's 2 things that Torah holds you accountable for, even though it's not yours. Burden and Shusar Rabbim and Chametz and Pesach. So the only reason you're held accountable for the Chametz is not because it's really yours. It's because the Torah holds you accountable because you did nothing. He says the moment you declare and you say, I'm not interested in this chametz, now you're saying, I also don't want it. So now the automatic hefker that Torah imposes upon the chametz already works fully. The only reason it doesn't work is not because it's yours. It's not really yours. It's hefker. It's just Torah holds you accountable because you didn't do nothing. You embrace the Comets. The moment you reject it, so now you don't have to accomplish a regular chalois of hefker. When you own a regular object, you have to create a real chalois of hefker. It's yours. You have to relinquish ownership. There's many qualifications. You need 3. You have to take it out of your reshus, etc. The Ran discusses this. But by Chametz, he says, you don't need a regular idea of hefker. Why? It's already hefker. All you need is, I agree with Torah that the Chametz should be hefker. That's it. The moment you do that, it's already hefker. If the Torah makes it hefker, Torah says it's not yours. There's nothing you can do with it. God, your creator who owns the world, says this bread is not yours. There's nothing you can do with it. The moment you say, I agree, I'm not interested, it's not mine, it's hefker, there's already a chalois hefker. That's how the Ran learns it. In other words, it is unique to Chametz on Pesach. From Tosfos, you see, it's the regular status of hefker. From the Ran, it's unique, but it's still not the definition of tashbisu. The way Rashi and the Rambam put it, they don't even mention the word hefker. They say that it's a special din, hashbasa belev, that it's like, it's offer. But now, let's go to the next step. How do we answer the question of Tosfos on Rashi? It seems like that this is very difficult. How did Rashi really have the ability to say that tashbisu means bittul? Ach b'yom harishon tashbisu means Erev Pesach. At the end of 6 hours, you should be mevatel chametz. When you're not allowed to be mevatel chametz, then it doesn't work. Bittul has to be earlier. That's the halacha ad hayoym hazeh. Once the time comes, there's no bittul. It has to be yours to be mevatel. It has to be your property to be mafkirit, to say it's worthless. That's the Gemara. How can Rashi say this? Besides the first question of Tosfos, of course, proof of Rabbi Akiva. But the first question is Rabbi Akiva's view. The second question, it's just impossible. How is Rashi going to deal with this? So here, we come to a very famous discussion and analysis of the Minchas Chinuch. The Minchas Chinuch was first published in the year Tov Reish Chof Tes. It's good for the yeshiva light here who know the name Minchas Chinuch. It's good to know a little bit what the book is. Minchas Chinuch was first published in Tov Reish Chof Tes, which would be 1869. The author of Minchas Chinuch was Rabbi Yosef Bavad. His Einikel was here a few weeks ago at the Shir. I don't know if he's here this week. I guess not. Rabbi Yosef Bavad, he is the author of Minchas Chinuch. Rabbi Yosef Bavad was one of the great rabbis of the time in Galicia, in eastern Poland, western Ukraine, in the city of Ternopil. The Minchas Chinuch, Rabbi Yosef Bavad wrote a commentary on the Sefer HaChinuch, which is an encyclopedia of all the 613 mitzvahs, but it's not just a commentary. He really went in to dissect and analyze each mitzvah brilliantly, and it became what they would call today a bestseller in the world of Torah already when it was published. He was in his first zivug, he married the sister of Reb Chaim Tzanze, the Divrei Chaim. Reb Chaim Halberstam, Rabbi Yosef Bavad was his brother-in-law in his first marriage. He passed away, I believe, he was born, Chav Daled Elul, and he passed away the same day. Chav Daled Elul, I believe in Tov Reish Lamed Daled, 1874. Mitzvahs essay tes in Chinuch is Tashbisu. So the Minchas Chinuch, right in the beginning, begins, he says, Yesh Lachkar. We must investigate what is the definition of the mitzvah of Tashbisu. So again, the Minchas Chinuch was born 1801, he passed away 1874, the same day Chav Daled Elul. His book came out a few years before his passing, and in Mitzvah's Essay Tes, he sheds a new light on this discussion. What does the Minchas Chinuch ask? He wants to know if the mitzvah of Tashbisu is a passive mitzvah or an active mitzvah. Is it a mitzvah that you fulfill through Sheva al Tasa, or is it a mitzvah that you fulfill through Kum Va'aseh? What does this mean? you could look at the word tashbisu in two different ways. You could say tashbisu is like the mitzvah's essay of tzitzis. If you want to fulfill the mitzvah's essay of tzitzis, what do you have to do? You have to go buy yourself a cloak that has 4 corners, and then you have an obligation to put tzitzis on the cloak, and you mekayim the mitzvah of tzitzis. If somebody does not have a garment of dalit kanfus, he's not obligated to have tzitzis, but he doesn't fulfill the mitzvah of tzitzis. You have to have a talis in order to fulfill the mitzvah of tzitzis. If you don't want to buy such a garment, fine. The mitzvah of mezuzah. If you have a house, you're mechuyev to have a mezuzah. If you don't have a house, you can't fulfill the mitzvah of mezuzah. The Torah doesn't obligate you to buy a home. Maybe society does, but the Torah doesn't. But if you want to fulfill the mitzvah of mezuzah, you need a house. And when you have a house, you can have a mezuzah. If you're not going to have a house, there's no way you have a mezuzah. Tashbisu would seem the same thing. Tashbisu means there's a mitzvah to be mashbis chametz. What happens if somebody is on a gluten-free diet, like probably 50% of you at least for a few days, and you decide there's no carbs in your life anymore? The grains are the angel of death, even spelt, oats, rye, barley, and certainly wheat. No more chametz in your house. So Erev Pesach comes, you're really quite bored, you have nothing to do. Or I should say the people that go to a hotel for Pesach. So you come into your room, it's spotless, it's clean. There's not a brekel, there's not a speck of chametz anywhere to be found. Can you be mekayim the mitzvah of tashbisu? The Minchas Chinuch says it would seem not. For tashbisu, you have to go to the store, buy yourself a bagel, make sure it's not kosher lePesach, buy yourself a pizza, make sure it's not kosher lePesach, because today most of the pizza is kosher lePesach, or a lot of it. And then you could be mashbis. Now, I'm not telling you it's a problem. If you don't have a beggar, you're not mekayim tzitzis. If you don't have a home, you don't do a mezuzah. But if you want to do tzitzis, you have to buy a garment. If you want to be mekayim tashbisu, it's a kum v'aseh, you need to be mashbis the chametz. You got to go, buy yourself chametz, and then you can do tashbisu. If you don't have chametz, okay, no bal yirah, no bal yimatzeh, but you didn't do tashbisu, you didn't destroy the chametz, you didn't have chametz to destroy. Right? So you're not over, because there's 2 types of mitzvahs aseh, of kum v'aseh. There's a mitzvah like tzitzis, there's a mitzvah like tefillin. Tefillin, you don't just say, okay, I don't have tefillin, so I'm not going to put on tefillin. That's called mevatel, mitzvah essay. There's a mitzvah essay to pursue and get yourself tefillin. There's a mitzvah essay to get a shofar, to hear shofar on Rosh Hashanah. There's a mitzvah essay to shake lulav on Sukkot. You can't just say, oh, I don't have a lulav. You don't have a lulav, maybe you're an oinus, but you're mevatel, you're not doing the mitzvah essay. With tzitzis, there's no mitzvah to buy yourself a garment that has 4 corners and make tzitzis. If you have such a garment, then there's such a mitzvah. So there's 2 types of kum v'aseis. But nonetheless, it's clear, if you don't have a house, you didn't fulfill mezuzah. If you don't have a beggar of dalit kanfus, you didn't fulfill tzitzis. If you don't have chametz, you're not mevatel a mitzvah essay. There's no mitzvah in the Torah, you have to go buy chametz and do tashbisu. But if you have chametz, there's a mitzvah essay tashbisu. And if you don't have that chametz and you want to do that mitzvah essay, you have to go buy chametz and do tashbisu. That's one way of looking at it. But there's another way of looking at it, the Minchas Chinuch says. And that is the mitzvah is not an active mitzvah. The mitzvah is a passive mitzvah. It's like Shabbos or Yom Tov. Shabbos and Yom Tov, there's a mitzvah loisas, malacha. You're not allowed to do malacha. You're not allowed to cook, you're not allowed to plant, you're not allowed to plow, you're not allowed to write, you're not allowed to carry, you're not allowed to build. But there's also another mitzvah, a mitzvah's essay, tishbois. You have to rest on Shabbos. What do you do in order to rest on Shabbos? You don't do malacha. And when you don't do malacha, you are fulfilling 2 mitzvahs. A mitzvah's loisasev, loisasecha malacha, and a mitzvah's essay of resting. In other words, you fulfill the mitzvah's essay through passive rest. What we call sheiv v'al tasa. By doing nothing, by not doing malacha, you're not only fulfilling a mitzvah's loisas, you're also fulfilling a mitzvah's essay. He says maybe that's the meaning of tashbisu. Tashbisu doesn't mean you have to physically eliminate the chametz. The mitzvah is that when Erev Pesach midday comes, so there shouldn't be chametz in your house. And when there's no chametz in your house at that time, you will fulfill the mitzvah of tashbisu. Because the mitzvah is l'chatchila, not a mitzvah of kum v'aseh. The definition of the mitzvah is a passive mitzvah. Sheyehi mushbas. That your house should be cleansed from chametz. You fulfill it through the act of not having chametz in your house. That's what tashbisu means. Of course, if you have chametz, you have to physically eliminate it. But if you don't have chametz, you don't have to go buy chametz in order to fulfill the mitzvah. Rather, if there's no chametz at 12 o'clock, you fulfill the mitzvah of tashbisu. Why did you fulfill the mitzvah of tashbisu? Because the mitzvah of tashbisu is sheyehei hachametz mushbaz v'oimed. That at that time, the chametz should be mushbaz from a person's house. There should not be chametz in your house. That's the chakira of the Minchas Chinuch. What's the difference between the first way, and the second way? The Minchas Chinuch gives a few fascinating differences. The first is what we just said. If I want to fulfill the mitzvah of tashbisu, do I need to purchase chametz or not? According to the first way, I have to go purchase chametz to fulfill tashbisu. If not, I wasn't mevatel a mitzvah's essay that the Torah says I have to do, but I certainly didn't do the mitzvah. According to the second fashion, I don't care if you never saw a piece of chametz in your life, if your house never had a piece of chametz ever. The fact that Erev Pesach in the afternoon, there's no chametz in your house, you fulfill the mitzvah of tashbisu, just like on Shabbos, you fulfill the mitzvah of Shabbosin through Sheval Tasa, through doing nothing, through the fact that there's no chametz. The passive reality that there's no chametz is the fulfillment of the mitzvah of tashbisu. There's also a second difference. What's the second difference? Timing. If the mitzvah of tashbisu is kun va'aseh, do it, so then the mitzvah has a time. Ach b'yoyim harishon, tashbisu. It has a time. Lulav has a time. Shofar has a time. Bris Milah has a time. If somebody gives their son a bris on the 7th day, they didn't fulfill the mitzvah of Bris Milah. Somebody blows shofar on some gedalia, maybe a beautiful thing to do, I'm not sure, but you didn't fulfill the mitzvah of shofar. And if somebody shakes lulav on Chanukah, it may be entertaining, but you certainly didn't fulfill the mitzvah. There's a certain time for the mitzvah of tashbisu. But if you say the mitzvah of tashbisu is what? That when the time comes, you shouldn't have chametz. I don't care when you're mashbas. I don't care if you do your hashbasa erev Purim. I don't care if you do your hashbasa erev Yom Kippur. I don't even care if you do your hashbasa Rosh Chodesh Elul. Get rid of the chametz whenever you want, as long as when erev Pesach comes, the state of your home is a state of hashbasa, that there's no chametz. Through sheval tasa, you fulfill the mitzvah, because the act of elimination, that's not the mitzvah. That's just the prerequisite to be able to do the mitzvah. What is the mitzvah? The mitzvah is the passive reality that there's no chametz. That's the mitzvah. That's how you fulfill the mitzvah. So what do I care when you actually get rid of the chametz? It makes no difference. That's the second consequence of this chakira. There is a third major difference, and this is very interesting. Minchas Chinuch says, what happens if you're home on Pesach, and chas v'shalom, in the middle of Pesach, suddenly you find a very nice geschmacke chocolate and cheese Danish. Oh, chametz. I got to get rid of it. So what do? You eat it. You eat it. Now, you're certainly not allowed to eat chametz on Pesach, right? We know that. It's an Isur Kares. But here's the question. Thank you. Did you fulfill the mitzvah of tashbisu? When you ate that chametz, or even Erev Pesach, 12 o'clock, you take the chametz. Oh, you have chametz. No matches, no fire. Let me eat it. You eat up your chametz. Is it a mitzvah ba ba'avera? There's a shitta that mitzvah ba ba'avera min ha-Torah is not a mitzvah. If it's a mitzvah that comes through an avera, right? It's not a mitzvah. I'm doing a mitzvah tashbisu. I'm doing an avera. I'm eating chametz. So the Minchas Chinuch says it depends. If you say that tashbisu, what's the definition of tashbisu? To physically eliminate the chametz. So then, I'm doing the mitzvah of tashbisu through doing an avera. The mitzvah is being facilitated presently through an avera. But if the mitzvah of tashbisu is not eliminating the chametz, the mitzvah of tashbisu is not to have chametz, so eating the chametz is just the prerequisite for tashbisu. It's not the tashbisu. It's the catalyst for tashbisu. It's the springboard for tashbisu. It's not the tashbisu. The tashbisu happens after I eat it. The tashbisu happens as a result of my eating. So it's not a mitzvah haba ba'avera. The mitzvah came through a previous avera, but the mitzvah itself is not being achieved and accomplished and facilitated through an avera. So I would be fulfilling the mitzvah of tashbisu. And then the Minchas Chinuch gives another reason. What happens if it's Erev Pesach in the morning? I take my chametz, I'm about to burn it. You don't have any chametz, you want to do the mitzvah of bir chametz, so you grab my bag of chametz and you throw it into the fire instead of me. There's a din in Choshe Mishpat Siman Shin Pei Beis that if somebody grabs away my mitzvah, I can penalize them monetarily. Asara Zuhovim, for example, I shech the chicken, I want to do kisui hadam, I want to cover the blood with earth. You chap and you cover the blood with earth. I can get a monetary penalty because you stole my mitzvah. So the Minchas Chinuch says, if somebody takes away my chametz and burns it, am I obligated, can I get money from him because he stole my mitzvah? Depends. If the mitzvah of tashbisu is what? To physically eliminate the chametz, of course he did. He deprived me from the mitzvah of tashbisu. But if the mitzvah of tashbisu is what? I shouldn't have chametz when Erev Pesach midday comes, then he actually did me a favor. I don't have chametz when Pesach midday comes. He spared me the headache of going to the fire. He actually did me a favor. Maybe I have to pay him. No, we don't say you have to pay him, but certainly you can't penalize him because he didn't take away your mitzvah. You did your mitzvah fully, because what you need to do your mitzvah is not to physically get rid of chametz. What you need to, in order to accomplish your mitzvah, is not to have chametz Erev Pesach at 12 o'clock or 6 hours. And you didn't have chametz. You didn't have chametz at that time. When I saw the Minchas Chinuch, I thought to myself, perhaps the two sides, the two perspectives, this chakira, you can discuss. When you read the pasuk tashbisu, you could look at the pasuk in two ways. If you go back to the pasuk, it's the third source from the top. Take a look at the pasuk. Shivas yamim matzos techelu, ach b'yom harishon tashbisu sarme batechem, ki kol oichel chametz v'nichrus hanefesh heim yistom yom rishon ad yom hashvi. So what does it say? Three things. You should eat matzos for 7 days. On Erev Pesach, you should eliminate the chametz. Whoever eats chametz, because whoever eats chametz is karas. Now, we know there's a concept called hekesh, meaning when you have halachas in one pasuk, they're always juxtaposed to each other, and they're compared to each other. This is called hekesh in Talmudic terminology. The mitzvah of eating matzah is sheval tasa kum v'aseh. Of course, kum v'aseh, right? You don't fulfill the mitzvah of eating matzah by sitting on your couch like a couch potato and reading a magazine. You fulfill the mitzvah of matzah by eating matzah. So when the pasuk says Shiva Sema Matzos Techelu Ach B'Yom Rishon Tashbisu Sema B'Teichem, my natural inclination would be tashbisu is just like eating matzah. You eat matzah through kum v'aseh. Tashbisu is kum v'aseh. But then the Torah says Ki Kol Oichel Chametz V'Nichrasa. Torah says, but you know what the issue of tashbisu is? It's a very interesting Chasam Sofer. Chasam Sofer writes in Torah's Moshe on Parshas Boy. He says that Tosfos asks in the beginning of Pesachim, why is it that chametz is asur in Bal Yirah and Bal Yimatzeh? It's a unique phenomenon. There's a lot of foods that are forbidden. The Torah doesn't say you have to get rid of them. You have a lot of foods. There's no isur. Basa b'chalav, meat and milk. There's an isur of Bal Yirah, Bal Yimatzeh. There's no such an isur. What's the uniqueness? What's the uniqueness of chametz? And the answer is because chametz is an isur kares to eat, and yet you're accustomed to eat it all year, and it's right there. That's the issue. So the Chasam Sofer says, that's what the pasuk says. So early, why? Ki kol oichel chametz v'nichrasa. Because if you eat chametz, there's an isur kares, and Pesach you have to eat, and Pesach you're not allowed to eat chametz and it's kares, and you're accustomed to eating chametz all year. So that's why there's a mitzvah of tashbisu. So when you look at the reason of tashbisu, ki kol oichel chametz, do you need the kum v'aseh? What do you need the kum v'aseh? As long as there's no chametz, so you're Makayim Tashbisu. So if you compare it to the first half of the pasuk, it's kum v'aseh. If you look at the second half of the pasuk, the reason is you shouldn't have chametz to eat. If you shouldn't have chametz to eat, what do I care if you eliminated the chametz? If you didn't eliminate the chametz, if there was no chametz, you're good to go. This is the chkira of the Minchas Chinuch in Tashbisu. According to this chakira, let's now go back to Rashi and Tosfos, as the Minchas Chinuch himself points out. Is Rashi really refuted by Tosfos? No. What was Tosfos' problem? If Tashbisu is bittul, how can you do bittul? B'soif sheishayis, you're not allowed to do bittul then. So Tashbisu must mean burning, not bittul. But Rashi may hold that Tashbisu is a sheval tasa. You don't fulfill Tashbisu through eliminating the chametz kum v'aseh. You fulfill Tashbisu by not having chametz in your house. So tashbisu means bittul. When do you do the bittul? Whenever you want. At night, Erev Pesach in the morning, 11 o'clock, 11:59. It says, ach tashbisu, When midday comes, is there chametz that belongs to you? No. You will mevatel it. You will mevatel it before. If tashbisu is kum v'asei, then Tosfos has a problem. But if Rashi holds that tashbisu is an inyan of sheva al tasa, so once shei shayis are there, you don't have chametz anymore. Why? Because you did a previous bittul. So everything is solved. There's absolutely no problem. Tosfos, however, holds that tashbisu is kum v'asei. There's a positive mitzvah that I have to go be mashbis chametz. So therefore, how can I be mevatel at the end of 6 in the beginning of the 7th hour? It's already after the zman ha'isur. Tosfos says you can't. So you have to say, what does tashbisu mean? Tashbisu means havara. Tashbisu means making a fire, not the concept of bittul. Why do Rashi and Tosfos argue? Perhaps because, as the Minchas Chinuch says, because according to Rashi, tashbisu means bittul. If tashbisu means bittul, he has no choice but to say that tashbisu is a sheva al tasa, because there's no way you can do bittul kum v'asei in the beginning of the 7th hour. You can't be mevatel after the zman of the isur, so therefore Rashi has to say that it's sheva al tasa. But according to Tosfos, tashbisu doesn't mean bittul. Tashbisu means burning. If it means burning, why should Tosfos say that it's not a kum v'asei? Why change it from a mitzvah of shofar, from a mitzvah of sukkah, from a mitzvah of lulav, from a mitzvah of tzitzis, from a mitzvah of mezuzah? Why not say it's like a regular mitzvah? There's a positive mitzvah to eliminate chametz, and therefore you do it b'soif sheshayis in the beginning of 7, and you can do it because it's not bittul, it's burning chametz, and burning you can do 12 o'clock p.m. There's no problem of burning chametz at 12 o'clock p.m. from a biblical perspective we're talking about. How did the Rambam learn tashbisu? Rashi, he learned like Rashi. What's tashbisu? Tashbisu is hashbasa, believe, but tashbisu is at the end of 6 hours. How does that work? But if the Rambam learns like Rashi, that the primary mitzvah of tashbisu is sheva al tasa, so you fulfill the mitzvah by not having chametz, so you could do bittul earlier. The main thing is that at the end of 6 hours, you're not over on tashbisu, you're not over on the isur essay that you have chametz, you don't have chametz, you fulfilled your mitzvah. So the Rambam could learn that it's tashbisu. And that's why it's very interesting, because when the Rambam defines the mitzvah of hashbasa, take a look in Rambam Hilchas Chametz Matzah Perek Beis, the 1, 2, 3, the 5th source on the first page. Mitzvah sesim in atayra lahashbis hachametz. What are his next words? Koidem zman isur achilasai. According to Tosfos, it's not koidem zman, it's by the zman. When it becomes the end of 6 hours, you have a mitzvah to burn chametz. According to the Rambam, tashbisu is bittul. It can't be after the zman ha'isur. You can't do bittul. It's kaidem zman. What do you do kaidem zman bittul? It says ach b'yayim harishon tashbisu. Automatically, it's mushbas.
How do you differentiate between machlokes Rashi, Tosfos, and machlokes Rabbi Yehuda Rabbanan? The Torah all being the same. It's machlokes Shimon is really machlokes Rabbi Yehuda Rabbanan.
Right. That's why the Minchas Chinuch makes a special emphasis to say that it's not totally in this machlokes. The Minchas Chinuch himself says that it's not totally in this machlokes. Why? In other words, you could learn each shitta differently. He says you could learn, Rabbi Yehuda holds, that it's sheva al tasa. By not having chametz, you fulfill the mitzvah. However, if you're going to have chametz and you want to fulfill the mitzvah of tashbisu, Torah gives a certain halacha. The same as you can say according to the Chachamim. The mitzvah is kum v'asei. And Torah says, hashbasasa b'chol davar. That's what the Minchas Chinuch himself says. But interestingly, in Reb Chaim says, what's the Svaras HaMachloikes? The Svaras HaMachloikes is, Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim, if it's a din in the cheftza of the chametz, or it's not a chalois din in the cheftza of the chametz, it's rather a din on the gavra, but then he adds by Rabbi Yehuda. You realize he adds, even if you're going to say that tashbisu includes the isser that you're not allowed to have chametz, why does he add that? Even if you say tashbisu includes the isser that you're not allowed to have chametz, according to Rabbi Yehuda, nonetheless, even if you're going to say that, nonetheless, still, the mitzvah of sreifa is a din in the chayfetz. Still, it's a din in the chayfetz. It's a gather of nasa mitzvah. It's a gather of nitik lase. So Reb Chaim himself makes that little bavarnish, I think, which helps with answer your question. Now let's go over from the world of Halacha to the world of Hashkafa and ask a very simple question. We can understand Tashbisu in Sheval Tasa. The mitzvah is, Pesach comes, you shouldn't have Chametz. If we identify Chametz as the Yetzer Hara, Chametz as an unhealthy ego, Chametz as crudeness, primitiveness, self-aggrandizement, insecurity, or whatever good things, good attributes you want to identify with Chametz. So should be Isa, as the Gemara says in Brachos, Daf Yud Zayin. So I understand the Mahalach that the Torah says when Chametz, Pesach comes, you shouldn't have Chametz. How? If you don't have it, great. If you have it, Tashbisu. But let's understand now the second oifen, the shit of Rashi, or maybe the shit of Rabbi Yehuda, the shit of Rashi, the shit of Tosfos, that it's a mitzvah of kum v'aseh. As the Minchas Chinuch puts it, if I don't have Chametz, I have to go acquire Chametz in order to burn it. Why would the Torah tell this to a person? Go attach yourself to things that are undesirable in order that you should be able to get rid of it. Sheval Tas, I understand. If you have it, get rid of it. If you don't have it, awesome. You did the mitzvah. But the shita of Tosfos Kum V'aseh says, no. I need you to go buy Chametz Erev Pesach in order to do Tashbisu. If Chametz is becoming so negative on Pesach, so get rid of it. You don't have it, great. No. Kum V'aseh. You need to acquire the Chametz in order to be at Mashbis. Or the way that Chaim understands it, that the mitzvah is not only that the Bailam shouldn't have Chametz. The machshir of the mitzvah is through Chametz. The mitzvah of Tashbis is only through Chametz. Without Chametz, you don't have the mitzvah. If you say the Chachamim said without Chametz, you have the mitzvah. Without having Chametz, you have the mitzvah. But if you say, according to Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Chaim says, no, the machshir of the mitzvah, in order to have the mitzvah, what do you need? You need the Chametz and you need to burn the Chametz. So let's see what the Chassam Sofer says. Chassam Sofer Haggadah Shel Pesach. Shebechol haleilos anu oichlin chametz u'matzah. Hinei ein yotzim bepesach l'shem matzahs mitzvah rak b'davar rabba l'dei chimutz. The Gemara says in Pesachim Daf Lamed Hey, a fascinating halacha. The only type of grain that you can use, the only type of matzah with which you could fill the mitzvah of matzah, is a type of matzah that has the potential to become chametz. For example, if you take rice, you take corn, you grind it into flour, you turn it into matzah, it can't become chametz. Why can't it become chametz? Because simply it lacks what happens to the enzymes as a result of the shiul chimutz, as a result of leaving it doesn't become chametz, it becomes sirchan, it becomes decayed. It doesn't become leaven, physically. So the Gemara learns out from the pasuk, it says, "Leiseichel of chametz, shiva shem teichel of matzahs," that you can only fulfill the mitzvah of matzah from something that has the potential to become chametz, and you have to guard it. Ask some Sefer, I don't understand. Pesach Jews are very stringent about not eating chametz. What's the greatest hazard of chametz on Pesach? What do you think? Matzah. The greatest chametz hazard in the world is matzah. So if you could make matzah that can't become chametz, it's the greatest matzah in the world. But that matzah is not good to be yotze the mitzvah. You fulfill the mitzvah only from a type of flour and water that when you need it, it will become leaven unless you bake it fast, unless you guard it, unless you make sure it doesn't become leaven. But what if millet, corn, rice, etc., those who eat kidneys, it'll never become chametz. Never. You could take corn flour, rice flour, and leave it with water as a dough for 24 hours. Nothing will happen. Rashi puts it. It's decay, it's not leaven. And we know today in chemistry you could see it, the difference. It's a process of rotting, not a process of leavening. The best matzah, and you have perfect matzah. But the halacha is no. Ask the Chassam Sofer why. Because I don't understand. Adirab, kiven dizira teira lechel dafka matzah, not chametz. Yoiser toiva yelechel memin she'ena yachel love b'shem avshonos l'dei chimutz. Isn't it better to eat matzah that doesn't have the ability to be chametz? Because now when we eat matzah, you don't know if it was left a little too long. What happens if the drop of the dough wasn't baked? If a little bit of the dough wasn't baked? So it could be chametz, right? That's why there's the chumrah of, many people have the chumrah of matzah shrui gebrukt. What's the chumrah? The chumrah, if the drop of it wasn't baked, it gets wet. It could become chametz, etc. V'yesh loimen al piremes. Says the Chassam Sofer, Hine, avodas hamalachim einu k'may avodaseinu she'en b'em yetzer hara. The work of the malachim is not like our avodah. They don't have a yetzer hara, rak mi sheyesh b'yetzer hara. U'misav v'lechol hadvarim. But somebody who has a yetzer hara and he has a craving for all types of things that may be unhealthy or immoral. U'bamesh she'koyvesh yitzer l'kvoida yizbarach shmoyla netzach zeu ha'ovid hashalom. And when he conquers his yetzer hara for Hashem, this is the true Ovid Hashem, not the person who's like a malach who doesn't have a yetzer hara. V'hinei chametz miramas al yetzer hara ki yadua. The Gemara says in brachas that chametz represents the yetzer hara. O matz al yetzer toiv ki yadua. V'zeh ma sheyachal lavi l'dei chimutz bazeh yoytzi yedei ma'etz adafka. Hainu b'ameh sheshayich b'yetzer hara ha-meiritz shetzorech lizoyer v'lichber shalayav l'dei chametz v'rak yei matzah b'kedusha. When can you fulfill the mitzvah of matzah? Only with an item that's on the way of becoming chametz. In other words, a person who's on the way to becoming chametz, he has a yetzer hara, there's chametz, and on his own, he's going to become chametz. The yetzer hara is going to take over. And he has to deal with it, and subdue it, and conquer it, and fight it, that it shouldn't become chametz, because on its own, it's becoming chametz. He's not an angel. Rather, he has to fight to make it matzah. This is the mitzvah of matzah on Pesach. This is the avodah that Hashem loves. Unlike if this is his natural nature, he's angelic, he's a pure matzah, he can't even become chametz. You could put him anywhere, you could leave him everywhere, he doesn't have to guard it. Nothing will happen. For him, all the chametz is just sirchin, it's just decay, it's worthless. With this, he can't be yoytze matzah. This is not the avodah tama, the avodah chaviva lefnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This the Chassam Sofer says. Let's see a shtickle that elaborates a little bit from a different angle in the Tanya Perek Chav Zayin. Says the Baal Tanya, Ushnei minei nachas ruach lefonav yizbarach lamayla. The Rebbeinu Shalom has two types of pleasures. Aleph mibitul asitra achere legamri v'eshapchem emiriru lemiskem mechashoichel enoira de atzadikim. There are tzaddikim, he defines here a tzaddik as somebody who manages to completely transform his yetzer hara. He completely is mavatal, the sitra achra, transforms bitterness to sweetness, darkness to light. That's one nachas ruach. A person who reworks himself so deeply that he takes his very animal consciousness and reorients it as a partner with his godly soul to serve Hashem. Internally, he's aligned with Hashem's will, not only externally, his whole muhus, his whole metzius. V'hashen is the second nachas is, kadeskafia sitra achre ba'oide betokfo gvurasa. When unholiness is subdued, when it's still in its full power, umagbiya atzma kenesher, it raises itself like an eagle. And then through the Beinanim, who is not the tzaddik, the intermediary Jew who struggles with his own sitra achera and constantly has to guard himself, not to fall prey to addiction, not to fall prey to negative behavior, not to fall prey to thoughts or words that are detaching him from his true essence and from Hashem, and always has to fight. And the sitra achera is as powerful as an eagle, rising itself as an eagle, and in that state he should subdue it. This is the second nachas ruach. V'zeu shamar hakosov, Yitzchak Avinu tells Esav, Aseli mat'amim kasher ahavti. I want you to make me mat'amim, delicacies, plurally, the way I love it. Mat'amim loshin rabim, shnei minei nachas ruach, v'umaymer hashchina leboneh, klolos isoka de pirish betikunim. It says in Tikkunei Zohar that this is a metaphor for the Shechina speaking to its children, to Esav and Yaakov, and the Shechina tells its children, and it says, Aseli matamim. I don't want one dish. My dinner should not be of one dish. I want a 2-course meal. I want matamim. I want 2 different types of delicacies. What are these 2 matamim? Kemoish, he gives a fascinating metaphor. Kemoish matamim gashrim derech moshel yeshnei minei ma'adamim. Those who spend time in the kitchen know that there are 2 types of physical delicacies. Echad mima'acholim arevim u'masukim. Somebody makes a cheesecake. Somebody makes a delicious cheesecake, chocolate cake, cinnamon cake. They take sweet foods, of course very healthy foods, but sweet foods appealing to your taste buds, appealing to your abdomen. You eat it, you say, it's delicious, it's geschmack, it's wonderful, it's so sweet. what children like. Another lollipop, another cookie, another candy, another drawbreaker, another ice cream, and some adults, if you have a sweet tooth. V'hasheni, but there's a second type of dish. Midvarim charifim oy chamutzim. The great chefs know that they can take actually ingredients that are tardy, that are sharp, that are not very edible. They're sour, they're tardy. But if you know what you're doing, you spice them, you prepare the dish in the right way, until these very sour, bitter, tardy ingredients suddenly give a beautiful taste that give the soul tremendous solace and comfort. You take salt, you take an example of salt, pepper, or many different spices. Somebody asks you, what do you have for breakfast today? You're not going to say, I had salt or I had pepper. On the other hand, we know that some foods, if it's stuck in salz and stuck in pfeffer, it's worthless. So what is it? Too much salt, nish good. But if you put in the right amount of salt, the right amount of pepper, the right amount of this spice, that spice, it gives the food an oomph, a flavor, a savviness, a delightful taste, because you're using the very bitter taste and you're converting it into a catalyst, lahashivas hanefesh. What is this a mashal? Hashem says, aseli mat'amim. I don't want one type of dish. Matam, I want two types. There's two types of Jews. There are Jews who bring to the table sweetness, goodness, holiness. That's what they know. They're holy, they're good, they're sweet, they're wholesome. That's what they bring to the table. Hashem says, what a geschmacke dish you make. But then there's other Jews. And these other Jews, they're filled with pepper, black pepper. And they're filled with salt. And they're filled with thoughts or cravings or instincts or emotions or addictions that are complex, that are sometimes promiscuous, that are sometimes depressing, immoral. And they look at themselves, and what do they see? They see a lot of darkness, and they may despair. So the Balatanya says, no, asei li matamim. Your avodas Hashem has a unique flavor all its own. Take those very ingredients that you defined as evil, and utilize them as an instrument for avodas Hashem, and then it becomes the most beautiful dish for the Rebbeinu Shloim in the world. Because when I have a moment of darkness, and I let myself define the darkness rather than the darkness define me. In other words, I say that the darkness is there for me to confront it, to subdue it, to transform it, to deal with it. So what happens? I took the very bitterness and I used it as a springboard, as an instrument for my avodas Hashem. It became the hechsher mitzvah. So your darkness becomes a hechsher mitzvah, because through that you will avodah Hashem. You use that as an invitation to subdue, to transform, to educate, to work with yourself, to discipline yourself. So now that very bitterness becomes the hechsher of your avodas Hashem. So this is a different type of transformation. It's not a transformation where it becomes good, where the very negativity, as it remains negative, is used for avodas Hashem. This is a special nachas ruach, aseli matamim. Says the Chassam Sofer, that's why matzah can only be matzah that's on the way to become chametz. It's a metaphor for a person. You have a person whose matzah can't become chametz, whatever you do. There's nothing in him that allows him to become chametz. There's no yetzer hara. You can't do the mitzvah with that. The mitzvah is dafka with the person who's on the way to become chametz. There's a lot in him that's going to make him chametz. Ushmartem es hamatzas. He has to guard himself. He has to work with himself. He has to challenge himself. He has to make sure it's not becoming chametz, it's becoming matzah. This is the avodah, this is the mitzvah. This then explains l'cha'ira that sad, al pi musar, al pi drash, al pi chasidus, al pi avodah. That sad in the chira of the Minchas Chinuch, that tashbisu is not just sheva al tasa. Tashbisu is kum v'aseh. That there's a mitzvah before Pesach, go buy yourself chametz, in order to be mashbis the chametz. And if you're not going to have chametz, we'd have no complaints, but the mitzvah you didn't do. What does this mean? It's a source of tremendous comfort for a person. That sometimes there's no mitzvah spiritually to go buy yourself chametz. But sometimes we're in a situation where we're put into chametz, or chametz is put into us, one of two ways. Comes the Minchas Chinuch and says, here is where the mitzvah of tashbisu applies. If you wouldn't have it, you would never be able to do tashbisu. Just like you can't do matzah if it doesn't come with a chimutz. It's only because you have the chametz, now you have the opportunity of the mitzvah of tashbisu. Without chametz, there's no mitzvah of tashbisu. The fact that you don't have chametz, that's not the mitzvah. You have to have the chametz, and when you're in life, you find yourself having that chametz. Don't see it as a tragedy, see it as an opportunity for mitzvah tashbisu. Or in the Oisius of Reb Chaim, the chametz, what's the machshir mitzvah of hashbasa? Not the lack of chametz. The machshir mitzvah of hashbasa is the presence of chametz. Not the lack of chametz. That's not what makes the mitzvah of hashbasa. What makes the mitzvah of hashbasa is the presence of chametz and the din shreifa in chametz. What is this in a person's avodah? The machshir of the mitzvah of tashbisu is not that you don't have chametz. It's that you have chametz, and the very chametz becomes an instrument for kiyum ha-mitzvah. The very chametz becomes an instrument for hashbasa. The very chametz becomes the tool and the springboard where you have the mitzvah of shreifa, or in avodas Hashem where you have the mitzvah of avodas Hashem, of dealing with the chametz, of burning it, of getting rid of it, of educating it, of disciplining yourself. This you fulfill only through the chametz. Even according to the Shitta of Rashi, that is Sheva al Tasa, still the Chaim Sofer says, if you want to be Mekayim the mitzvah of matzah, it's only if it's Yechoyla Lovely de Chimutz, when it's on its way to become chametz, and nonetheless the person makes sure it doesn't become chametz. This is the type of mitzvah, the mitzvah Tama, the mitzvah Chaviva, L'fnei Hashem. Have a wonderful Yom Tov, a guten Chodesh, a kosher and a freilich in Pesach. Yes. Right. So that's what Minchas Chinuch says, that when you eat it, you're over on the Isra of Achila. But the mitzvah's essay of Tashbisu, you are Mekayim. You're already over by your Rabbi Yimot? No, by your Rabbi Yimot it starts at night. We're talking about somebody that's saying, you're already saying before. Now you eat. So the question is, were you Mekayim the mitzvah of Tashbisu by eating? So that's a shaila. If you say that it's kumvase, so then it's the basachas. Because eating it and it's the basachas. And we're not talking about it. We're talking about tashbisu.